Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. Okay, today we're sitting down and we are doing my 2023 palette ranking video. I love doing this video. I have done one every single year since I started my channel back in 2020. So this will be my fourth one. I'll go ahead and link the other three down below in case you want to check them out, because not gonna lie, the other three are gonna be a little bit more interesting than this video because I have not really been super, I don't want to say not super into makeup this year, but I just haven't had the time for makeup as much as years past. If you're new to my channel, hello, welcome. Thank you so much for clicking on this video and checking me out. But I had a baby back in March, my daughter Ivy. So because of that, I just have had less opportunity to try makeup this year. So I only have 10 palettes to rank, which you would think would maybe make the ranking a little bit easier than other years in the past, because I've had like 20, 30, 40 plus palettes in years past. So you would think like, oh, cool, you only have to rank 10. Probably make it a little bit easier, but actually I feel like oddly it made it harder, because I just feel like each number carries more weight when there's less palettes. These are not all of the palettes that I brought into my collection. This year I have bought palettes that I haven't had a chance to try out. And I've also been really, really lucky to be sent other palettes in PR from different brands, Colourpop, What's Up Beauty, Alter Ego, that I just unfortunately have not had a chance to try out. I didn't want to try some of those palettes that I got in PR like one time in a video for you guys and then put it in my ranking at the end of the year and really not have truly tried it out multiple times and got my real thoughts on it. I just kind of held off on trying those palettes until I maybe have a little bit more time or can just really deep dive into them and not have it be like a one-off sort of trying in a video. Does that make sense? I think it does. These are the 10 that I tried out this year. I've tried them multiple times, multiple different ways, multiple different looks. So let's go ahead and get started with number 10, the last palette, my least favorite from this year. This one was easy. The other ones like after this were a little bit more difficult, but this one I knew pretty much from the moment I tried it earlier in the year that it was going to be pretty low on my ranking, and it ended up last. The Milani Gilded Mini palette. This is in the shade The Wind Down. This is just not good quality. The mattes are decent, especially for an affordable drugstore brand. The mattes are not very patchy. They blend together very nicely. They're pretty. But these couple of shimmer shades are just like not it, man. This one is real lackluster. I mean, it's pretty, don't get me wrong, like that's pretty, but I don't know. On the eye, it just doesn't do much. This one is so crumbly. It's literally falling apart in the pan. I have to be careful every time I like touch it and swatch it. You can see how like chunky it is, even right there on my finger. And then this one is just a basic shimmer that like you would get in a ton of different palettes. If you can tell on my fingers, they're just real thick and chunky and just, I don't know. They don't do a whole lot to me. It's really the shimmers in this palette that I really don't enjoy. But overall, it just is not worth the money in my humble opinion. I think if you wanted to go the more drugstore route, I have a palette that is better, way up higher in my ranking, that I would recommend over this one any day. Now keep in mind though, I only tried this one color story of this type of palette. I know the all matte one was getting some hype from a couple of the YouTubers that I watched earlier in the year. So maybe that one was a little bit better than this one because the mattes were pretty decent. But yeah, these chunky thick shimmers, I just can't do it. I do not recommend this one. All right, next up we have the Colourpop Flirty Talk palette. I was sent this in PR at the pretty much the beginning of the year near Valentine's Day, which if you can tell by the packaging and the color story, this definitely is a very Valentine's Day-y kind of palette. There's nothing inherently wrong with this palette. The couple times I used it, I liked my looks and all of that, but I just don't use this color story very often. They're very bright and bold and poppy. Also, a bunch of these mattes, they just ended up looking the same on my eyes. Like these two looked very, very similar, and these two did as well, which they look similar in the pan. I don't want them to look similar on my eyes. If you're gonna have two different shades in a palette, they should be different enough and hold their own. And for this, it just didn't. This is a Super Shock that I don't love too much. This is more of a pressed glitter. And then a couple of these mattes have shimmer in them. I just don't prefer that sort of formulation from Colourpop or really any other brand. And again, the color story. So if this is a color story you like, I was gonna say go ahead and check it out, but honestly it's Colourpop. It's probably not even available anymore. Don't quote me, I'm not sure. If it is, I will link it below along with all the other palettes and everything else that I used on my face here today, but I would be willing to bet that it's not. In 8th place, we have the Pat McGrath Labs Mothership, the Love Collection, and this one is in Iconic Infatuation. I don't think these are available anymore, so I'm gonna try not to harp on it too long. It was just a disappointment to me. It's pretty much the same thing that a lot of people have been complaining about Pat McGrath about over the last couple of years. They're just basic shades, honestly basic quality, which is a bummer because Pat McGrath is expensive and you pay a lot of money for these palettes. I want to say this is like $65. And it was just like such a bummer, especially for the price point. The mattes are just mattes and they get a little bit too deep on me. So that's definitely personal preference and a skin tone thing. So keep that in mind if you, well, I was gonna say if you had your eye on this palette, but again, I don't think it's available anymore. It's just the mattes show up a little bit too deep for me. And then so do the shimmers. Like these two are too deep, in my opinion, to really go on my eyes in a way that I like. And then this one is just a basic champagne that you can get anywhere. I mean, the Milani palette had that and that's like a couple dollars, you know what I mean? So I just was really disappointed by the quality in this. The color story in person on my skin tone, I didn't love. And it's like, it's Pat McGrath. You're paying a lot of money for Pat McGrath and I just was bummed by this palette. So this is what I was kind of meaning earlier in the video when I was talking about how each number just weighs a little bit more when you have less palettes. This one is ranked 7th and you would think 7 out of 10 is really, really low and isn't a good palette, but I actually really like this palette. From here on up, I like all of these palettes and I'm going to tell you like why and why I ranked them where I did. Obviously that's the point of this video, but I do like this palette. It's just for my preferences and how much I used it, that is why it's ranked here. It's the Glamonatrix Nearly Natural palette. This was a purchase that I thought about for a very long time. It was out of stock for a while and I had just kept wanting it and then going back and forth, and then they brought it back in stock for pre-order, so I ordered it, and then I actually ordered it last November and it didn't come to me until like, I want to say February or March. Like it took a long time to come to me. And so like, because I waited so long to order it, and then when I did order it, pre-order it, I knew it was going to take a while, but then it took like months. It just like the hype was just like building and building and building. And then when I got it and tried it, nothing's wrong with it. It's just the color story. And again, for my preference and my skin tone, I just don't reach for it as much as I would want to. There's not a lot of lighter mattes for me to go in as like a transition shade and then build. There are a lot of deeper mattes for me to build, but even these couple of lighter mattes do end up looking a little bit deeper on my skin tone. And then these shimmers are just not the type of shimmer I'm really, really going for these days. They are very shimmery, very impactful, beautiful. Like, don't get me wrong, they are stunning. So if that is the type of shimmer you like, definitely keep that in mind. If they bring it back, I don't know if this is still available either. Like, look at that. That's beautiful. It's just, I'm not really going places or needing a really intense sort of shimmer like this palette has. And when I look at this, I see those deep, rich mattes and the shimmers, and I want to go like deep and smoky and date night. And we just don't get a lot of those these days with an 8-month-old. We go out to dinner with her, you know, sometimes, but we go at like 4 or 5 o'clock because she goes to bed so early. So I just don't really feel comfortable wearing a super deep, sultry, smoky sort of eye look at like 5 p.m. So quality-wise, it's absolutely stunning. And it really is like a good palette just for my preferences right now and the type of makeup I'm wearing. I'm just not reaching for this very often. This next palette is one, again, that I thought about for a long time before purchasing it. I saw quite a few videos on it and I really, really thought I was going to fall head over heels in love with it and it was just going to become like my next go-to palette. And unfortunately, that didn't really happen. I do really like it. And when I reach for it, it's pretty. There's just some things about it that I would change. And it's a Lunar Beauty Nude Prism palette. First of all, packaging, 10 out of 10, absolutely beautiful. Just Manny's packaging is stunning. And this palette really is beautiful. It's got a lot of things about it that I do enjoy. I like the gradient of the mattes as well as the gradient of the shimmers. So it gives you a lot of options. You're not really like pigeonholed into one certain type of look that you can do. However, up at the top, the lighter shades, I feel like there's not a really good, just brownie, neutrally light shade. The lightest sort of brown shade is this one. It just leans a little bit on the orangey side, which isn't my favorite. And then these ones down here, like these three, I don't really reach into. They just get very, very deep and dark. Again, preference, skin tone thing, I understand. Like, I understand why these shades are in the palette. I just personally don't reach for them very often. And then the shimmers, I was convinced I was going to love every single solitary shimmer in this palette. That was another reason I wanted to pick it up, and I just don't. This white one here is pretty, but it's just a white shimmer. This one I don't really love because it's super gold, as well as these two down here. They're just too gold and deep for my skin tone and the type of shimmer I like to put on my eye, as I have a gold shimmer on my eyelid. This is pretty much about as gold as I go though. Even this is like a little bit too orangey gold for my opinion. If you're curious, I don't have any of these palettes on. I actually have the ABH and Norvina original palette with like the purple packaging on. I just hadn't really reached for that palette in a hot second, so I decided to use it today. This is about as gold as I go. So then that really leaves me with these two shimmers, which is Laura and Sam, and they're stunning and beautiful. I love using these two shimmers, but they're kind of similar. Like they're kind of similar on the eyes. I can't really see a huge difference. One's a little more goldy and one's a little bit more pink tone. So I'm like limited when it comes to the shimmers. And then again, the mattes, I mean, they're pretty, you have a lot of options, but I just feel like these are the options, like these matte options I just don't reach for very much. I don't know how to explain it. I just don't use this palette as much as I thought I was going to. I really thought I was going to love it and it was going to become like my next, like I said, go-to palette. And I do like it. I do think it's pretty. And I actually did use it a couple of days ago for our Friendsgiving with like our group of best friends we always hang out with. And I loved the look that I made. But I mean, I use like basic brown mattes and then like Laura on my lid. So it's like a pretty simple, basic look that I probably could have gotten with a lot of other palettes as well, you know? All right, this next palette I actually really love. Like I truly love this palette. And in the summertime, this was my go-to. You saw this on my eyes all of the time. But I couldn't rank it any higher than 5th because it is a cheek and eye palette. So it's from Buxom. It is their straight up eye and cheek palette. So it has 4 eyeshadows and a blush. I just think because of the limitation of the 4 eyeshadows, I couldn't rank it any higher. But these 2 shades right here was pretty much the only shades that I wanted to wear the entire summertime. I would put this light brown matte into my crease and then put this beautiful shimmery all over my lid. It's stunning. It's just like a really pretty foil, just brown shade. There's really nothing to it, but I wasn't wanting to wear something super sparkly, and this kind of gave me the little pizzazz I wanted without being too overboard back in the summer when I was like, I'm a mom now, I can't wear sparkly eyeshadow. I'm definitely growing out of that and like embracing sparkly eyeshadow again. But back then this was my jam. Like you can tell there's a pretty big dent in this. I use this all summer long. These 2 are pretty as well. I don't use them as much, but they are pretty. And then this blush is a really nice blush shade. I use it a lot of the times when I use this palette, but because there's only 4 shades and the cheek aspect of it, I couldn't rank it any higher, but this is beautiful. However, I did want to mention, I love it so much for these 2 shades and the really simple, beautiful eye look I get out of it, but it's just a matte brown and a brown shimmery sort of shade. Like you don't need this palette to create the look that I love to make with this palette. So keep that in mind. I don't know what is happening right now with my chest and my neck. I'm like really hot and like, gosh, this is normal. This happens to me a lot, but I just, if you see a little bit of that redness peeking through, just ignore it. This happens to me a lot. I don't know. This next palette might surprise some of you that it's not my number 1 because I haven't seen any other ranking palette videos quite yet. I have a feeling that this is going to be a lot of people's number 1 palette, and for me it is number 4, and it's the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude palette. This palette's beautiful and stunning, like don't get me wrong. It's just, I don't know, just something about it is not like my go-to everyday. Like I kind of have to force myself to use this palette, which is a little bit weird. Color story is beautiful. I really do enjoy it, but a couple of these mattes look really similar on the eyes, which I just do not enjoy. That just like irks me about palettes. If you're going to have different mattes that are like similar to each other, kind of like these two. These 2 right here are a perfect example. They're really similar to each other in the pan, but also on your eye. That was just one example. A couple of these shimmers do the same as well, like these 2 shimmers right here. So it's just not a go-to palette for me. I like it. I think it's pretty. It's good quality. I don't really struggle with it per se. Like the mattes are nice. The shimmers are stunning and beautiful. I would use a glitter glue with them, but I used the glitter glue with every shimmer. Actually, I think I liked all 5 looks I made when I did a 1 week 1 palette on this. And I have reached for it a couple times off camera, like in my everyday real life. And I like the looks. Like I like this. I like this palette. I think it's pretty. I like the looks. I just can't rank it any higher than this. And I feel like I definitely wouldn't spend full price on it. Maybe try to get it on sale if you have your eye on it. I don't think it's worth full price, but yeah, I just can't rank it any higher. In 3rd place, we have the Patrick Ta Major Dimensions 3 palette, which is a little bit funny that it's in 3rd place and not 1st, because honestly, I love the Patrick Ta palettes. They are so stinking good. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen my last year's ranking, but his Major Dimensions 2 Rose palette was my favorite palette from last year. Wore that palette nonstop. Absolutely love it. And I actually really do love this palette a lot as well, but it's a little bit newer to me. And these cool tones down here are not as pretty on me as I thought they were going to be. I have reached for this palette quite a few times, especially with how new it is to me. I've only had it for like a month or so, and I probably already used it 5 or 6 times, which is a lot for me and how little I wear makeup and all of that. But of those 5 or 6 times, I've only used the cool shades once, because when I did use them, I was a little disappointed by them. They turned up a little bit more warm on my skin tone than I would have liked. A lot of cool toned makeup does that to me though, so I wasn't shocked, but I just was bummed because I love Patrick Ta and his brand so much that I wasn't expecting those shades to do that on me, you know? But this top row, these warm shades, oh my gosh, stunning. I love using this top row. I love just doing an ombre matte look, or just taking one of these and putting it all over the lid and into the crease and just making like a really simple everyday sort of eye look. Quality is amazing. I love Patrick Ta and his mattes. They are some of the best mattes I've ever used. They're just creamy and blendable and don't get patchy and aren't fluffy and don't like fade throughout the day, and they don't get all muddied together and look like one shade. A lot of times mattes do that, where if you're using a gradient, it just kind of ends up looking like one blah shade on your lid. That doesn't happen with these. I really do love this palette. It's expensive, it's pricey. I don't know if it's necessarily worth the price tag, just because it's all mattes, and like a lot of these mattes you can get in other palettes. But for me, I knew I wanted to pick it up during this Sephora sale and get the 20% off, and I'm very happy I did. I have a feeling that I will use this a lot. And then my top two, I was toggling back and forth between the two of these. I really could intertwine them. I don't think that's right. Intertwine? I don't think that's the word I want to use. I could switch them any given day. I really love both of these a lot and recommend both of them to you. But I did go ahead and put number 2, the Blend Bunny Cosmetics All Done Up palette. This palette is perfection. It is absolutely stunning and beautiful, and I love it. I love it. Other than the Patrick Ta mattes, these mattes are the best mattes in my collection. They are blendable, smooth, creamy, don't get patchy on me. Well, they do get a little patchy on me, but that's because every eyeshadow gets patchy, like right here in my eyelids. I'm fine with it. These get patchy the least. I love the columns that she did, where it just goes from light to dark and then you have a shimmer at the bottom to use. The reason why I put this in second and not first is because these shimmers are intense. If you want your eyeshadow to be seen from Mars, pick this palette up and use these shimmers. They are just so foiled, so rich, so creamy, and just like look at that. They are just so insane. Let me swatch them. They are beautiful and just really impactful on your eyelid, which again is not really the look that I'm going for these days, but when I do want that super impactful sort of eyeshadow, I reach for this palette, because look at that. That is just stunning. Oh, I love them. I don't use this one very much, the super goldy one, and even this one's very, very gold leaning, so I don't really reach for those two very, very often, but these three right here, stunning. But I actually have done a ton of all matte looks with this palette, just because it's such a perfect gradient and it's easy and simple because there's only 3 mattes for each colorway. So I just kind of put this in the crease, this on the outer corner, and this on the lid, or like any of the other columns, like this one, you get it. And it's just so good. It's just, the quality is amazing. I love the color story. I love all the different options you get. You get cool tone browns, warm tone browns, a little bit mustardy yellow, green, and then really, really cool tone gray, black, white, if you want that. So you just have a lot of options with this palette. You can make endless looks, and again, if you want to va-va-voom and spice it up, these shimmers are just perfection, chef's kiss. So I love this palette. I love this palette. I highly recommend it. If you like this color story, if you think you'll use it, quality, top notch, love it, love it, love it. And last but not least, my number 1 favorite palette from this year. I think it's gonna surprise some of you guys, and it kind of surprised me. It was a dark horse that I just used for the first time and really loved it, and then just kept using it and using it and using it, and I was like, man, the quality on this is amazing, especially for being a drugstore palette. And it is from Covergirl. This is their clean color line that they have, and this is in the dreamy pink shade. They have other colors, and actually I loved this one so much that I went ahead and bought another one. This is in their mellow mauve one, but this is one that I have not gotten a chance to use, mainly because the color story, I just am not going to reach for these like pinky purples very often. I know I need to just suck it up and try it, but I just haven't yet. But this dreamy pink one, you guys, when I tell you that this palette is stunning, it is absolutely perfection. Everything about it. These two mattes are creamy and buttery and like super smooth, like Patrick Ta and Blend Bunny, and they are high-end brands that are way more expensive than this. I do think this is like $15. I think that's ridiculous for the price tag personally. Covergirl, I just think maybe it's 10. If it's 10, it's fine, but I want to say these are 15. And if that's the case, I just don't think they're necessarily worth the 15, only because it's Covergirl, it's a drugstore brand. So like, just basically my point is get it on sale because they do go on sale pretty often, especially on Ulta. But this color story is just perfection. Like I was saying, those two mattes are just really buttery and smooth and beautiful. And then these two shimmers, oh my gosh. So here's the two mattes. They don't look like anything special, but on the eyes, they're just really pretty. I don't even know how else to explain it, but just pretty. And then these two shimmers, this is obviously the lighter one and the darker one, are just like the type of shimmers that I'm going for these days, where it's not super impactful on the lid. It's just a really simple subdued shimmer that's still beautiful without being sparkly and like glittery. This one is really smooth. This one is a little bit chunkier, but not in like a bad way, not like the Milani chunky. It's just a little bit thicker of a shade. But both of them are beautiful. I will use both mattes, one matte, both shimmers, one shimmer. Like every combination of these 4 shades you can think of, I have put on my eyes and I've loved all of them. I think it has the Charlotte Tilbury-esque vibe of this dreamy pink color story of just like her Pillow Talk collections, and just, it reminds me of Charlotte Tilbury. And I'm telling you, the quality is so good. I want to say like especially for a drugstore palette, but it's just good in general. Like if you blindfolded me and had me use this, well, I guess I wouldn't be putting eyeshadow on if I was blindfolded, but if you had me use this and I didn't know it was CoverGirl, I wouldn't guess it was CoverGirl. I would guess it was like Natasha Denona or Charlotte Tilbury, or, you know, like probably not Pat McGrath because the shimmers aren't impactful enough, but just it has the beautiful quality that I come to expect for eyeshadows, you know what I mean? So yeah, if you have not tried any of these out, I highly recommend. I've only tried this dreamy pink, but I do have that other one, and I honestly kind of want more. I really do. I'm trying to not buy anymore because I do have so many palettes, not so many, but I do have quite a few palettes that I haven't had a chance to try out yet. So I'm trying to like slow my roll and not buy more color stories, but I might have to in the future because I love them. And it comes in like 8 or 9 different color stories. So there's definitely a lot of other options if like these pinky tones are not your jam. But yeah, this is just blew me out of the water, and I just kept reaching for it over and over and over. And I just love it. I love it. It's beautiful. And that was it, you guys. That was my 2023 palette ranking. I know this was a lot less palettes than I typically have in these videos from years past, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, but this is all I got the chance to try this year after having my daughter back in March. So I feel good about this ranking. A couple of the ones, you know, at the bottom I would not recommend, but pretty much from like 7 up, I recommend all those palettes to you, and I think they're really beautiful. And yeah, I'm loving them all. I'm excited to keep using them as we embrace 2024. I'm hoping to get up a like best of 2023 and worst of 2023 makeup, hopefully coming up very, very soon. We shall see. I'm trying to end the year with a bang and like have a couple videos come up in December. We'll see what I get done between my daughter and then just being busy with holidays coming up. But let me know, have you tried any of these palettes down below? What are your thoughts? Or what was your favorite palette from this year that you tried out that you were just loving? Maybe if I haven't tried it yet, I will check it out. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much. You're awesome and I love you. Please subscribe if you have not yet, and hope to see you in my next video. Bye guys.